Hello and welcome to today's episode of Canadian Challenge Tales. I'm your host, Dan Kirkup, and we're going to jump right into part 2 of our interview with Garrick Schmidt. And this one we're going to talk about dog sledding and how he got into it and some of his plans for the upcoming season. It sounded like you guys are working with sled dogs as well, which is really exciting. And I believe you're working with kids as well to help mentor them into learning sled dogs and being able to run them. I want to go back in time a little bit to when you started and when you got mushing. Do you have a first mushing memory or perhaps, a good story from one of your first few times mushing you can share with us?
I got a few. I was probably about 12 or 13 years old, and high school, or I guess a school friend, family friend of ours from Indian Head. Her name's Nancy Dragon, and I think she's raced the challenge a little while or a little bit. And but when I was young, she brought a few. I don't know if it was her full team down or her had just a few dogs down, but I remember my mom and we went over to her place, to her parents, and at the time I think we had about a 6 or 7 month old Siberian Husky, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a harness for this dog, and I'm gonna get a kick sled, and it's gonna be unreal. But I think helping Nancy those couple of days with dropping dogs and kind of getting a little taste of it when you're a kid is like, I I wasn't overwhelmed with the amount of dogs. I wasn't overwhelmed with the amount of work. I just fell in love with it. Um, but even too, like thinking of harnessing dogs when I was a kid, I think my real first experience, it wasn't a sled dog. It was probably about a 200 some pound German Shepherd. I was maybe about 5 or 6 years old, and my dad thought it would have been a really good idea to hook up this huge German Shepherd to I guess the front of those little red um, sleds that you would pull around kids on. And so here I am thinking, oh, yeah, this is going to be awesome. I get in this little sled. My dad, almost as if you would like with horses, spank it in the bum. Did the same with the dog. The dog takes off, pulls the leash out of my dad's hand. And here I am, 6 years old, kind of giggling but screaming at the same time, going down the street in small town southern Sask, and the sled starts to turn and drift a little bit, and here I go, front of the sled, kind of face first into a power pole, and I guess it didn't scare me.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting first time.
Yeah.
And as everybody seems to have that, first time story where they, maybe bit off a little more than they could chew, and it for some reason doesn't seem to scare people or deter them. It seems to make them a little more motivated. And so, I'm curious about how you went from, your initial time with a sled dog in, 12 or 13, and what brought you to, the sled dog race this past February with us.
So um, kind of grew up, and our husky, as she kind of grew older, I didn't have the ability, I guess the chance to, and I didn't know where to buy a kick sled or a smaller sled for her from. But what I did in the winter and in the summer, because I was an athlete and I played volleyball a lot, what I did is, I guess now that I know about what it is like canacross. So I'd run her hooked up in a harness, and I would have booties on her, and we would go and run in the wintertime, or we'd run in the summer when it was cool out, and I'd have this dog kind of helping pulling me, but we'd go and run 15 miles, and we'd it was really, really enjoyable, especially like doing those runs in the summer in the Coupelle Valley. But it was my first year when I was teaching at Old Chapways. Um, Kevin Lewis, he had brought, I think they brought two crews down to the school. It was kind of our winter festival there, and it was kind of cold out, but we knew that the guys were there, and we had just finished skinning rabbits. So pretty much I didn't really have much experience or a taste of running dogs or a full team with sleds or anything from 12 until I was about my late 20s. So I'm teaching a grade 8 class at OCHAP, and I hear Kevin and the guys come, and I had remembered how to hook up dogs and handle dogs, and it's like, hey, like, I asked my class how many of them had their winter gear, and it was awesome because they all had appropriate clothing. So we got outside and we helped Kevin and the guys that first day with kind of wrangling dogs, handling, hooking up, draw, and like harnessing and everything that goes with handling. And I remember one of my younger students, his name is Kendall. He looked at me and he jumped on the back of the sled, and I think he drove almost all darn day, and that kid just absolutely fell in love with it. And it's so amazing to be able to see that passion that we have for dogs, to be able to pass that on to our students, or any of the youth that we work with, whether that's races or the tours that we do. So I had that, I guess, that second little hit, that little taste of dog sledding when I worked with OCHAP. And Kevin and the guys, they were there for about a week. And then on their way out the week after, they were going up to Cody First Nation. And Kevin comes and asks me, he's like, hey, like, do you want to come and help run dogs for a little while? I was like, well, I got to get the okay from my admin. Like, this is teaching time. But he's like, oh, but anyways, we ended up getting it figured out. And I think it was minus 45 and running dogs up at Cody First Nation, giving tours there to the kids. And it was, I don't know, a dream come true almost. Um, and then fast forward a couple weeks later, I get a phone call from Kevin, bro, like, we're going to Wanuskewin. We got like a huge day coming up. Are you able, like, if you want, like, come up and help out? And so drove up there to help out at the Kuna Festival. And I think we ran dogs from 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning till sundown. And um, we were exhausted. The dogs were exhausted. We had, geez, thousands. It felt like thousands upon thousands of people that lined up for tours that day. But about 3 years back, I got this idea in my head of, hey, like, I want to get a team of my own. I don't know when, if it's going to be 5 years or 10 years down the road, but I eventually want to get a team of my own, even if it's just 5 dogs or 6, like, whatever, right? And Kevin and I, we were visiting over the phone one day, and I don't know, if I can't remember if it was the phone or Zoom or something, but say, well, like, if you want, come up in the fall, like October, November, December. We'll do some dry land training, and if this is something you want to really do and get into, I'll sell you some dogs and a few sleds and a dog box for the box of your truck. And um, it seemed like it happened super, super fast, but here I am. I started with a team of 10, and I'm up to, I think, just shy of 30 dogs now in 3 years. So, but my big goal when I started, I guess, Eagle Ridge dog sled tours and racing kennel, is to educate our youth in the South. I was one of the few guys running dogs in the southern area of the province, and um, being an educator, I was able to give that background, teaching as to why we use dogs traditionally, and then kind of where the technological advances kind of came in and the snowmobiles kind of moved the dogs away, where it was easier instead of guys having teams of dogs. But um, with my students at Old Chap and White Bear and the communities that I was able to go and do tours with, um, it was just absolutely, it's unbelievable to be able to go and share what I'm passionate about, with communities around southern or northern Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, and then just kind of see that, I don't know, that spark in those kids, because there's a few kids that I taught down at White Bear that I know, and maybe in 3 or 4 years I'll get a shoulder tap and they'll be telling me, hey, I'm ready for dogs. So that's my goal, is for, I think, ideally to have like every community to have a team of dogs of their own, to bring that back, or every like 3 communities. I think that would be amazing to see. And um, then now to get into the racing aspect of it, and then still have like the tour mindset, but still like we have our athletes that we're getting ready to train for these crazy distances. It's not as crazy compared to the Iditarod, but like starting out, like, geez, like 100 miles or 200 miles that's still crazy, especially to do that with dog power.
A lot of people think about it in terms of driving their vehicle, right? You think
Mm-hmm.
about driving 100 miles, you're talking about, an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's not much. But to take a
Yeah.
dog team that far is a tremendous amount of work. And you certainly showed that at the Canadian Challenge as part of the 8 dog race. It was a 2-day event, 50 miles each day.
Mm.
Can you give us some insight on, because I believe that was your first race. So can you give
Yeah.
us some insight on, how it felt in your first race, or maybe you can share, part of the experience on the trail, because there's basically nothing between Larange and Mississippi where the trail was that you were on. Can you share some of that with us, and maybe try and explain? I know it'll be really difficult, but try and explain to
Mhm.
people what it felt like to be on the runners in your first race in the middle of, wonderful Canadian wilderness.
I think too, like, we've paddled that not identical route, but I've paddled those lakes and those rivers, and I've done those portages in the summertime. So to be able to do the portages in the wintertime via dog team, it was unreal. But before the race, oh my gosh, I felt like my heart and my stomach I felt like I was gonna puke. Probably um 2 or 3 hours before the race, like, I couldn't sit still. And like, a lot of people that know me, they know that I can't sit still anyways. I always have to be very busy, doing something. But leading up to the race, I was nervous, but like super 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 excited. And then when it was time to kind of get going, because Kevin, he left a little ahead of me. And when we started getting the booties on my dogs, the jackets, the harnesses, and getting them on the gang line, and it was like, holy, like, this is like all the time and effort that we put into training in the fall and in the winter. Like, this is it. And it was unbelievable to see the amount of people there at the start line. The crowd was huge, and the amount of energy that they gave off was great. Um, but like, as you go and you kind of cross that start line and you leave everybody, that's where the magic happens. That's where you have those conversations with each and every one of your dogs on your team. Um, you can have that time to make sure that they're all good, they're all physically well. Just you're, I don't know, with the smaller teams too, with because kind of keeping an eye on them, right? But the silence is something very, very enjoyable. Um, and I had thought like all year too, like, yeah, we're training, we're getting ready for this race. I'm gonna get my dogs because pretty much most of my kennel they come from sprint genetics, so they'll no problem do like 30-35 miles an hour if I don't have that drag mat down, and they'll go for 10 or 15 miles, and then it's okay, we need a rest. But all year I was training them to get out of that mindset, and where we kind of got steady running about 7.5 miles an hour. And I thought, yeah, this is a nice pace. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to take it slow. It's my first race. But kind of the first hour, couple of hours on the lake, you're getting closer and you're closer to the first portage, and you're getting further away from civilization. You can still kind of see teams behind you, see teams ahead of you, but it's just you and your dogs. Like, yeah, like we had those the tracker beacons, and if something, like if there was an emergency, we had that. But I think the cool thing that I really appreciated was that Kevin and I, we raced together. We didn't race like against one another. Was there, like, yeah, there's always that the competitive side there, but there was we had walkie talkies so that we were able to, I was able to see how he was doing if he was ahead of me, or he was able to see how I was doing if I was ahead of him. And it was kind of funny that too, that first day, my handler and like my family, like my mom, and then Kevin's crew, they're watching on the tracker that first day. And like I caught up to Kevin after a little while, and then I got ahead of him and he caught back up to me. And like we kind of played this like back and forth game later on in the afternoon as the day kind of went on. And but we had stopped and snacked our dogs at the same time. I was like, here, bro, like here's some coffee. I had a thermos in my sled, and it's like, here's some hot coffee or some tea. Like, what do you need? And we got back to the finish line in Mississippi after that first day of the 50 milers. And my buddy Dexter and then Kevin's crew too, they were like, what the heck? Like, did you guys stop for damn coffee break? Like, you guys were like right beside each other the whole damn way. And it's like, hey, we're visiting. Like, we're telling stories and just enjoying our time on the trail. Because even before the race started, Kevin and I, like, we're both so busy. But we thought, and this was the big thing that I remembered on the trail when I was on the runners, was this is almost like a vacation for us. It's a lot of work, and we're absolutely dead tired by the end of the day or the end of the 2 days. But it's that lifestyle. You pour everything into your dogs, and they give you absolutely everything that they have. And like you treat your dogs like gold, and they're gonna treat you the exact same way. And I was so thankful to finish that first day really well, and then that second day to I had to work hard. The snow kind of blew over the trail, and I don't know, I had the wrong plastics on my runners, so the sled was slow. But I'm very grateful to be able to have these opportunities to say, yeah, I run dogs. Yeah, I have a kennel of 30 dogs, and I did my first race last year, and I'm excited to hopefully do 2 or 3 races this year. So
Excellent. Well, it's that, the mutual trust
yeah,
between dog and musher that a lot of people struggle to explain. The dogs need you because you're the guy with the food, and you need them because they're the ones that are going to get you there. Otherwise, that 50-mile run between Mississippi and La Ronge is going to be a long couple of days. So you have to rely on each other to accomplish this task. And I mean, what an achievement to go out first time, complete 100-mile race, and to do it with dogs, coming into La Ronge at the end that are happy, healthy, and probably would have continued if you asked.
Yeah, well, and it was weird. Like out of the 8 dogs, I think 6 of them were leads that I ran with for that race. And as we kind of went on, like I switched some of my leaders out just to kind of give them a break from leading. But probably the last 20 miles of the race, that second day coming back into Lorange, none of my other leads would lead except for my one male, and that's Federer. He's, I don't know, a success story, a miracle story. That guy, he's going into his, I guess, I think he'll be 10 this year. So for a 9, 10 year old male to lead 100 miles, and like he led both days strong, and I like I pour, like you say, like you pour everything into these dogs and they give you everything, right? And to pour my heart and soul into him to make sure that he's gonna get me home safely and he's gonna get everybody else home safe too. Like it's that huge relationship that you have with your animals.
Exactly. And it can't be repeated
Yeah.
with anything else. You hear about it from a lot of other mushers, particularly those that do the really long distance races. They say the bond after the race is so much stronger than anything they'd experienced through training or anything like that, which is just tremendous and it really shows the challenge that
Mm-hmm.
dog team and musher go through involved in a race, whether it's a sprint race that's maybe a handful of miles or 100 miles or hundreds of miles or up to 1,000. And it's really impressive to see that connection between dog and musher and the teamwork required, because it isn't just one dog. There isn't a way to take a dog team and have one leader. You can't make those work, because just like everybody else, sometimes people get a little tired and sometimes they need a little extra push. And
Yeah.
I think of it like the gym. If you have a partner to go to the gym with, then you're pushing each other to get there. And I think the dogs do that really well as well, especially in the team. Just a simple adjustment from one position to another, put these two together or move this one up a little, is able
Yeah.
to really change the dynamic. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's that sort of experience that needs to be gained. And I think a lot of that is done through racing, where you're able to see the dogs and know when and how to make the adjustment so that each one of them is operating at the best that they can.
Mm-hmm.
Which really brings me to our fan question for today. This one coming from Marie Kong. And her question is, are there any mushers or kennels that you admire or would want to emulate? And can you tell us why?
Oh, geez.
I'm sure the list is long, but if you can
It's
share an
very long.
example.
Um, Geez, I'll try and narrow it down as much as I can, but I think like starting with Kevin, the care and the love that he has for his animals, and there's the whole traditional aspect that we take into account with our dogs, and then there's the old stories of Mayag and the wolf and his brother. Um, and it's kind of funny too because so a few days ago, I think that was Monday, I started my drive out to Ottawa to help pack up my fiance. She's moving to Sask with me. But on the drive out out east this way, I'd saw that our champ from last year, Jesse Terry, had posted. He had asked if anybody was driving towards northern, southern kind of Ontario, and so I messaged him. I was like, "Yeah, just like I'm driving through, like kind of by Sioux Lookout where you are. Like, what do you need?" And he needed a dog dropped off. He was selling a dog to a female musher in Quebec, and it's like, yeah, man, like for sure. But even in the little amount of time that Jesse and I got to visit after, like pre-race, post-race, And then even this last week too, and then even the conversations that we have over Facebook, um, the commitment that he has to his team, the level of excellence that he holds, like the high standards that he holds for himself, and his team. Um, that's kind of how, I don't know. I don't want to replicate or duplicate like his training regime, but taking tips and tricks from him and from Kevin and everyone that I'd had the chance to visit with last year. Um, but I think Kevin and Jesse for kind of like local. And then too, like when you look at it and in a bigger lens, you have the CVs that run the Iditarod. You have Brent Sass, who just won his first Iditarod this last year. And then like Lance Mackey as well. Those guys do very well. But there's really not a whole lot that you see. Um, unless of whatever is kind of showcased or portrayed in the media, because they do live so far away. But even to like seeing the stories of how guys have their kennels organized, and um, always, I don't know, that's kind of one thing that we do as educators too. We always borrow things from other people that work really well, and we make it and we mold it to fit ourselves. So that's kind of what I've done from learning from other mushers and other kennels. And it's like, hey, you guys have done this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to tweak this a little bit. Hey, this works really well for my dog, so I'm going to use this, or maybe try it this way. And so it's, um, there's the list that just goes on and on and on and on. I could blab on for hours, I'm sure.
Well, and that's one of the important things that people need to see is if people could copy Dallas Seavey or Lance Mackey or Jeff King or pick any
Mm-hmm.
of the most popular or well-known mushers out there, they would have done it. I think
Yeah.
it's important that people see a variety of different mushers and kennels and techniques and find what works best for them and their dogs, because
Mm-hmm.
not every dog is the same, not every musher is the same, and they really need to find what works best. You know, one of the recent podcasts I was listening to, the guest was talking about how he was recommending that somebody getting started and you want to go and work for someone as a handler. And they said, well,
Mm-hmm.
you need to see more than one kennel. You can't
Yeah.
just go to one kennel and say, okay, well, I learned how this person did it and I'm going to start my own. No,
Mm-hmm.
you want to see more than one so that you
Yeah.
can pick and choose the best and have, a little more in the bag of tricks, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that's certainly an important point, which I'm glad you brought up. The other thing I'll mention about the names that you brought up, one of the common denominators I see with all of them is the mental aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it so much with Lance Mackey in particular, where he has this incredible ability to be happy in some of the most treacherous weather conditions out there with no sleep, and you look at what he's accomplished, and the others as well, not to take
Mm-hmm.
anything away from anybody else, but this real strong mental state that they're able to do and able to maintain, especially given days of no sleep and hard
Yeah.
work and difficulty with weather. And that's really something I think a lot of people can aspire to, is not just, I want to win, I want to do well. Everybody would like to. If you can
Mm-hmm.
strive to be strong mentally
Yeah.
and look after the dogs and do what's best for them, I think that the rest will work itself out in the end. And so, which brings me up to, before we run out of time today, can you give us some insight into what you have planned for the upcoming season? You're up to 30 dogs now. You talked about doing a couple of races. Are you able to share with us today a little about
Uh,
what you have planned, or are you keeping the cards a little close to the chest today?
I don't want to show my hand completely, but I'm as open as I can be. I like to be as transparent as I possibly can for, I guess, I don't know, upcoming mushers. My handler from last year, she's going to race the 50 miler this year. And then for myself, I'm going to register for the 200 miler with the challenge, and kind of make that challenge and push for myself to get that, because we're trying to be back in Saskatchewan on the 3rd of August. And then our Sundance ceremony, our Sundance Lodge starts a couple of days after that. But once our big Sundance Lodge is finished, I'm going to start my fall training here pretty quick, and do it in the evenings or early mornings when it's really cool out. And I got a really, I maybe 5 or 6 yearlings that are up and comers from last year that they're old enough to race now, and I'm absolutely impressed with their demeanor, with their work ethic, and their how they are with the whole team. Um, so training is going to start much earlier this year. There's going to be a lot more of it, for myself and the team, or teams. But I'd like to even just register and race like the Torch River Run, the 80 miler, I think that is. And then we've been invited out to a couple of races out in Quebec as well. But they kind of coincide, like kind of they happen at the same time as around the time of the challenge. So I don't think we'll get a chance to come out east for a race, but I would absolutely, I'd love to. And then even to have the chance to go down to the States and do a small race down there. Even I think there's a 150 miler race up in the territories up in Whitehorse, maybe. I got to double check, but there's a couple Sask races that I for sure want to hit this year. And then if we can travel a little further for one or two, um, because that's going to be kind of the nicer thing this year without being tied into teaching at that one school. We can kind of take the time off and say, hey, like we're going to race dogs. Like this is I don't know, kind of a test to kind of see what my mental capacity, my I don't know how strong I am. I not to say how strong I am mentally, but um, to challenge myself and the dogs, but in a good way too, though. Because I want to make sure that I'm safe. The 6 dog team that I'm gonna put into race with Monroe, that she's taken care of, that she's got excellent dogs to race, and that I got good dogs to race too. So the well being of the animals always comes first. So I think if training goes well, then you'll be seeing us at the start line for the 200 and the 50 miler, and it's going to be an exciting year.
Excellent. Well, we're certainly happy to have you back and have you part of the Canadian Challenge. We're excited this year to have Adventure Destinations on board as our main sponsor again. We're going to have the finish line in Mississippi this year, so we can include a little more social
Mm-hmm.
events, so people can get together and you can spend a little more time with other mushers that, like Jesse, that lives a little bit farther away, and you probably don't get to see except during
Mm-hmm.
a race. So that's really one of the exciting parts for us. Before we go, Garrett, can you give people some information on how they can find you, on the land-based education side, your dog kennel with tours, or any of that, whether you have a website, Facebook, et cetera, that you can share with anyone?
Yeah, for sure. So I have personal Facebook and Instagram. It's just Garrick Schmidt. And then for my kennel and tour page, it's Eagle Ridge Dog Sled Tours. Um, we're hoping to it's going to be kind of, we're offering one new tour aspect with being up north this year as well. I haven't posted that on Facebook yet or Instagram, but I'll let you kind of be the first to hear. We're gonna offer kind of an overnight dog sled retreat. Kind of sled in with a team of dogs, 6 or 8 dogs, then kind of camp in a rustic trapper's tent, be fed well, moose meat or elk meat, and then run the dogs back the second day. So we're gonna have a couple more options for the tours there as well. So
That sounds excellent. So anybody that's looking to get in touch with Garrick, you can certainly find him there. We're going to include all of that information in the show notes so that you can go and look him up, whether it's on his Facebook or try and find a tour if you're looking for an overnight adventure. Absolutely. And if you're looking for anything on the Canadian Challenge or to keep track on the Canadian Challenge race itself, including the GPS tracker or any of the awards that we have that are new this year, you can find us at thecanadianchallenge.com. And anybody looking for more of this podcast content, this is episode 2 with Garrick Schmidt, and we're going to be having regular podcasts going forward. So please subscribe and share. And Garrick, really want to thank you and appreciate the time you've given for us tonight. Maybe a little longer than I thought it would go, but there's some tremendous information here for people, whether they're just getting started or a regular race participant or anybody that's looking at getting into dogs. So thank you very much.
No, thank you for asking me to be a part of this, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure. And coming from dogs, like anybody who works with dogs, we could probably sit and talk for hours about our kennels, right? And then tips and tricks and things that we've seen. And it's hours of knowledge to share. So.
Exactly. And I think it's important that people get out there. And if you're interested at all, go and learn. If you're new to dog sledding or dog mushing, I would encourage anyone to go out, get in touch, go and see a dog kennel. You will be amazed at the energy and the excitement out of these tremendous athletes and what they're capable of doing. Just go and get a hold of someone, talk to someone. Garrick's a great example. We also have Kevin Lewis, who we mentioned several times. He's going to be joining us for an upcoming episode as well. So get in touch with someone, go out and see them. You will not be sorry. It is well worth your time. Again, thank you to Garrick. And until next time, this is Canadian Challenge Tales. Thank you.
From First Paw Media, this is Canadian Challenge Tales. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your host is Dan Kirkup. Our executive producer is Robert Forto. Created for First Paw Media.